Hello, I'm Katie Schusler, and I'm a curriculum specialist in CEI's Meridian USA Professional Learning Program. I'm going to present a differentiated arts integrated visual art project that directly teaches literacy. By engaging students in an arts integrated project, students not only learn visual art, but are engaged, creative, inspired, and actually learn literacy content. They will learn literacy skills, including reading comprehension, vocabulary development, writing and speaking, as well as listening. And we will use the social studies content of U.S. history and patriotic education. This visual art project that teaches literacy is called U.S. Founders Mixed Media Portraits. Students will learn about four important figures connected to the founding of the United States: George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, James Armistead Lafayette, and Abigail Adams. Using teacher-provided facts and slides, students will identify and organize key information about each historical figure. Students will create aged, painted backgrounds using different color schemes and painting techniques for each founder, then trace portraits. On each background, students will write or paste simple sentences or concepts summarizing important facts about the figure's life and contributions to the founding of the United States. All completed portraits and writing pieces will be matted and displayed together as a cohesive class exhibition in the classroom or hallway. This project integrates writing, speaking, and visual arts, giving students a hands-on way to connect history with creativity while practicing literacy and artistic skills. The project addresses a wide range of visual art skills, such as mixing colors, painting and drawing, and assembling multiple parts, and literacy skills such as identifying a main idea, identifying supporting facts, explaining how details contribute to the founding of the nation, and engaging in guided discussions and oral presentations. This project is designed for grades 6 through 8 students with IEPs and addresses a wide range of learning levels. We have created 6 versions of this project to address the varied learning levels of students. We have versions aligned with grades 6, 7, and 8 standards for those students performing on grade level. We also have our early, intermediate, and advancing versions in which the project is modified for students who are alternately assessed. I will begin with an overview of these 6 differentiated versions. Then I will discuss the curricular resources. Finally, I will model the actual teaching of the project to a class of grades 6 to 8 student learners with varied learning levels so that you can understand how the project is differentiated and modified. So I wanted to show you an example of a completed portrait of George Washington. This is our advancing learner, grades 6 through 8. And you can see that they've added 3 facts about George Washington during this time period. And our standard 6th grade version asks students to write a minimum of 4 sentences. Our 7th grade version asks for a minimum of 5 sentences. And our 8th grade version asks for a minimum of 6 sentences. Here you can see an example of a completed George Washington portrait for our early learners. We have cut and glued 1 or 2 images from a collection of images that are available to print out and attach to the portrait. And that will be true for every founder. There is a series of images that students can choose from to cut and glue onto their backgrounds. Here is an example of an intermediate learner doing the portrait of James Armistead Lafayette. And this learner has chosen to do a mix of images and words. Again, cutting and gluing, and also writing in pencil and tracing 1 or 2 words. And your learner may also want to add additional vocabulary or images, and they're certainly welcome to do that. And here's another example of an intermediate learner option. There will be a set of teacher resources that you can print out with images and words for your intermediate learners, grades 6 through 8, if they prefer to cut out and paste words instead of writing and tracing them. And then for our advancing learner, grades 6, 7, and 8, they may choose to cut and paste phrases or short sentences onto their mixed media founders' portraits. So I just wanted to show you this as an option as well. All right, so this is going to be an overview of the materials that are going to be available to you to mix and match and customize for your particular group of learners. And I'm going to start by showing you the project resource guide just to kind of give you a little overview of what all is going to be included. There's an introduction kind of explaining the project as well as the Meridian pedagogy, essentially just explaining why and how arts integrated learning is a really effective and powerful tool. Then it goes ahead to give an overview of our curricular materials, which I'll show you in more detail in a few minutes. We have a curriculum map for each learner level. We have lesson plans, we have slide decks, resources and worksheets, and then the modeling video, which you are watching right now. This is the project overview. I will get into this as I show you more of the specifics. So this is a curriculum map. It's basically an overview of that particular set of lessons for that particular learner. So in this case, in this example, it's the grade 6 learner standard. It gives a summary of the project with the big idea, the essential question, as well as what to expect for the final product. And then it breaks down in what each lesson contains, which is an opening activity, visual art making, academic mini lesson, and closing activity. And you'll see when we look at the slides how those are broken down in each lesson. The curriculum map is also going to show you the academic standards, skills, and vocabulary, as well as the resources, as well as the arts standards, skills, and vocabulary and resources. The curriculum map also shows how assessment will be done, as well as Danielson framework domains. And then finally, there is an overview of kind of the main points of each of the 10 lessons. So that's a curriculum map. If you want to go deeper and expand on that, you can come over to a lesson plan. I pulled up the grade 6 learner lesson plan. This is just for lesson 1. So you're going to have 10 of these lessons. And it basically is like taking the lesson 1 bullet points from the curriculum map and expanding on them. So you'll see a detailed breakdown of the opening activities, academic mini lessons, the art making, and the closing activity. When you are practicing the lesson for yourself, this is a great resource. I also want to show you a graphic organizer example. Again, this is a grade 6 graphic organizer. These are going to be available for you to print out for your students if you would like to. And there is one for each lesson, in this case, each founder. And you'll be using each graphic organizer for 2 consecutive lessons. So I wanted to show you an example of a slideshow. I pulled up our early learner grade 6 to 8 slideshow of the U.S. Founders Portraits Project. And as I said before, for each lesson, we have an opening activity. We have a academic mini lesson. We have an art making lesson. And we have a closing activity. You'll see that for each of the 10 lessons. And I'm just going to skip back up to the opening activity so you can kind of see what it looks like. Most of them feature art that students can look at. And in the speaker notes, you'll see text pulled directly from the lesson plan with a script that you can follow. In this case, for the early learner, the question is, are people working? Point to someone working. Here's another opening activity slide. Do you see soldiers in this picture? Are the soldiers wearing uniforms? Yes or no? So that's the gist of the opening activity, is looking at art, talking about art, identifying different components of art that relates to the history of the particular founder for that lesson. Once we get into the academic mini lesson, it's going to be introducing a little bit more about the history and vocabulary of a particular founder. Lesson 1 is more of an overview of the general situation that led to the revolution. And you can see this is a graphic organizer example for our early learners. They'll be able to cut and paste from worksheets and resources, or as a teacher, you can prepare those things for your students to attach to their notes, information about what was happening. And, this is a very specific set of information about what was happening around the revolution, not really addressing other aspects of the history that were taking place, so just something to know and be aware of. And then I'm going to skip down to our art making lesson. Each lesson involves different steps. For the first lesson, all of the students are going to be creating backgrounds to make it look like old paper by mixing primary colors to make brown. And you'll see more of this when I do the modeling of the actual art making. So I'm not going to get too into this. And then every lesson has a closing activity, just an opportunity for students to share what they made and maybe do some reflecting and reviewing of what they learned. Each lesson has that same structure: opening activity, academic mini lesson, art making, and closing. And speaker notes with a script should you choose to use that. I also pulled up this example of an advancing learner grade 6 to 8 slideshow just so that you could see a little bit of the difference. This is the first slide of the opening activity. I'll go back to the one on our early learner slide just so that you can see how it looks a little different. And if you have learners in your class that might need this level of differentiation, you can certainly mix and match the slides across the slideshows and customize them to meet your learners' needs. That's something that's also mentioned over here in the project resource guide as it breaks down the lesson components. There's a whole set of charts explaining in more depth the differentiation for these projects, and I definitely encourage you to take a look at what that is for the literacy and for the art making, and then feel free to mix and match as needed for your group of learners. Here's some examples of how you might customize a slide deck. So in this case, the teacher has early learner, grade 8, intermediate learner, grade 8, advancing learner, grade 8, and is thinking about how to combine these 3 different slides. And this is what they have come up with. So you're welcome to do that as needed. We also have vocabulary words that can be cut and paste or laminated and Velcroed as needed, and an extensive set of images that can be cut and glued onto the art. So now I am going to go through the materials as if I'm about to teach a class of grade 6 to 8 learners at all levels, just so you can get a sense of how you can differentiate this project to make it challenging for every student at their level for each step of the project. All right, welcome everybody to our U.S. Founders Portraits project. I'm so excited to be working on this with you. We're going to present 4 different founders of the U.S. and create portraits using mixed media, which is a lot of different materials and backgrounds with facts and information about the founders. And teachers, just so that you know, every opening activity, I know I already mentioned this, but every open activity is going to be showing artwork from colonial times and asking questions about what's in the artwork. And here we see standard grade 6 slides. You'll see that the questions are kind of open-ended. And I just want to jump over to early learner, grade 6 through 8, to show you how it's differentiated. You're going to see more icons and less open-ended questions. You'll also see choices for answers. And so I'm back to the 6th grade. Essentially, the questions will differ, and of course the answers will differ, but you'll see a very similar setup for every lesson in terms of opening activity. And I'm saying that now because I'm not going to spend time going through every opening activity with you all, simply because I want to make sure we have enough time so that you can see the art making and just the overall structure of the project. So from the opening activity discussion, we'll go into the academic mini lesson. Again, this is our grade 6 learner standard version. Students will have graphic organizers. In this case, grade 6 has a series of questions to fill out based on lessons 1 and 2, you'll see. And eventually this information will get transferred to their art, which I'll show you. There's new vocabulary that will be introduced and a read aloud. For our early learners, the academic mini lesson graphic organizer has icons and it has just a few questions that can be answered with visuals. And you'll see for each learner, they are gradually differentiated up until 8th grade, where you'll see a lot more text and a lot more open-ended questions. So let's get to the art making for day one. I'll meet you at the art table. Okay, so I want you to see our supplies for day one. We have a cup that's half full with water and a large brush, a muffin tin for mixing colors, paper towels, and 4 sheets of watercolor paper. Then for those who finish early or have time, we have some extra materials for adding texture. A sponge brush, a toothbrush, some salt, and a spray bottle. I also grabbed a pencil for writing names, and you can see that I covered up my table with some butcher paper. You can cover yours with anything you'd like to keep it clean, and you can leave it covered throughout the project. Also for cleanup, we have a permanent marker and a Ziploc bag. So today we're going to create the backgrounds, 4 of them, for our portraits. And the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is write your name on the back of each of your 4 papers. So whatever that looks like for you as a learner, whether it's supported, cutting and pasting, just write your name on the back. And you might notice there's a different texture between the back and the front of the paper. Essentially, the side that feels a little more bumpy is going to hold the paint better. But honestly, you can paint on either side. So great, I have my name on all 4, and I'm just gonna take one of them for now. If you have space, you can line them all 4 up if you want. I'm gonna do one at a time because of my space situation. And then I'm gonna take my primary colors. I'm gonna take my muffin tin, as well as my brush and my water. And to make the paper look old, we're going to use brown and a little bit of yellow. And in order to use brown, we're going to mix these 3 primary colors together. Red, yellow, and blue together make brown. For my early learners and intermediate learners, teachers, you may want to pre-mix the colors, or if you have a brown tempera cake in your case, in your set, you can use that as a workaround, or you may just want to demonstrate how to mix it and then decide what works. So I'm going to show you to kind of activate these paints. I'm going to get my brush wet, tap off the excess water, and then just brush that water onto one color to kind of activate it. And then I'm going to take that color and add it to my muffin pan. Just kind of swirl it around in there. And I'll push my brush against the edges to get off the excess color. Then I'm going to rinse it and grab the next color. Same thing. And mix. Get off the excess. Dip it in the water. Grab my 3rd primary color. And mix. That should give you a little shade of brown. You're welcome to experiment with adding more colors if you'd like. I see mine has a little bit of a green tinge, so I am going to add just a touch more red. I'm going to leave that there so it's ready to go. I'm going to give my brush a good rinse. And by the way, your cup is half full of water. It's up to you how frequently or if at all you want to change the water. So I'm getting my brush wet, and we're going to do a wash, which is a thin layer of paint. And so in order to do that, I'm actually just going to paint water. My water is a little brownish orange, but that's okay. I'm actually just going to get my paper wet with water. And this is going to help the brown flow across the paper. And then I'm going to grab some of my brown and just see how it flows with that watery paper. It's pretty cool to see. Just kind of pull it down the page. And depending on your learners, this may be a hand over hand situation, and it's okay if there's white spaces that are still showing. The other thing we're going to do, you can see my paper starting to curl a little bit, and that's okay. That happens when it gets wet. After it dries, we'll flatten it. Once I feel like I have some brown on there, I'm going to rinse my brush and grab a little bit of yellow just to kind of add that yellowy aged look. Put it around the edges and a little bit in the middle. It's looking a little heavy, so I'm going to add some more water to it. And the other thing you can do if it feels like there's too much water on the paper is to grab a paper towel or a tissue and just kind of blot lightly, and then maybe take a dry brush, which you can dry by wiping on the paper towel, and just kind of spread things out again. So you're going to do this with 4 sheets of paper. I will let you guys do that. You can pause to do it, or you can continue watching if you want. And for, we always have learners who are early finishers, and so we have these really cool extra supplies they can try with. We have a brush which can be used to make splatters, but it can also just be used to move the paint around a little bit to create some texture. And it's really up to you as a teacher to decide which tools you want to be available. We have some coarse salt, which if you sprinkle it on when the paper is still wet, does create these kind of pockets of paint. We also have a spray bottle, so you're welcome to spray on the paper and it'll make some cool marks on there. We also have this finger sponge tool that you're welcome to encourage your students to explore for adding a little bit of texture around the paper. Okay, so go ahead and make 4 of those, and then we'll meet back to go over the rest of the project. I just wanted to give you one tip about cleaning up the tempura cakes, especially if they're really wet or the colors are mixed. It can feel kind of clunky. You can take a paper towel or a damp paper towel to dab the top, get it fresh again. You can also, if you have the space, just leave them open without a cover to dry overnight and then replace the lid once they're dry. And this will help preserve the life and longevity of the paints and prevent them from getting moldy. Okay, so I also wanted to mention to you at the end of day 1, once everything is dry, you have these large Ziploc bags, and this is where you can start to store all of the materials as the project progresses. So you can just go ahead and stack those up, put them in the bag, and put them aside until the next lesson. Now that we've completed lesson 1, let's do some reflection on our day. So these questions are just essentially a review of what we covered in the opening activity and the academic mini lesson. There's also some questions about the art making process. And I just want you to see for our early learner, grade 6 through 8, there are reflection questions and the option to point to answers. Welcome to lesson 2. Once again, we'll have an opening activity and an academic mini lesson with a graphic organizer that we'll complete using vocabulary and a read aloud. And then let's go over to our lesson 2 art making. I'll meet you at the art table. Great, welcome to art making day 2. I'm so excited that you're here. I have a very similar setup to yesterday. I have my primary colors, I have my brush and my water, although today I'm going to be using a smaller brush. I have paper towels, I have all of my optional tools. I also have a cotton swab and a finger daubing sponge. I'm just going to set those aside for now. And I'm going to pick one of my backgrounds that I made on the first day. Today, we are going to add some stippling, which is a fancy way of saying dots, to our background for our George Washington portrait. There's a couple of ways we can make dots. And before we do, I just want to encourage you and remind you that today we are using only the primary colors. I'm going to ask that you pick 2 primary colors. So there are 3, but you're just going to pick 2. Why don't you think about right now which 2 that you want? Did you decide? Okay, great. So I'm getting my brush wet, and in order to make dots, I'm going to take my first color, get it wet, just like we did when we mixed our brown paint. And if you hadn't mixed yet, just make sure you take a wet brush and gently pick up some red here. And to make dots with the brush, I'm going to grip it kind of like I would grip a pencil and just gently point up and down and lift my brush. Now this brush is going to make very small dots. Okay, that's option 1 for those of us who have the fine motor. Option 2 is to take a cotton swab, and you can actually dip it in the water as well, and then dip it in the paint. This requires fine motor as well, but you can certainly have a looser grip. And I might flip it over to choose my second color. I'm going to do yellow. Okay, and then our third option for stippling is going to be our sponge dauber. I'm going to give this a little rinse. See, I have it on my finger and I'm just rinsing it, squeezing it. And I'm going to come in and grab some more red for all that bloodshed. There was a genocide happening at the same time as the Revolutionary War. And you're going to learn more about that. There was a lot of bloodshed, people and animals, especially the buffalo. And one of the colonist strategies for attempting to eradicate an entire people was to cut off their food source. And they killed so many buffalo. People can be very cruel. So take your time on this. Experiment with the type of dots that you want to make, big, small, and make sure you leave some brown showing, that aged paper look. We want it to stay intact. If your learner has time, they are welcome to continue to experiment with some of the texture tools, perhaps giving a spritz to the background or experimenting more with the sponge, add a little bit of texture. I wanted to show you also the toothbrush technique. I get my toothbrush a little bit wet. I'm going to grab a color, and this does get a little bit messy. Just going to splatter. Use my finger to create some splatter. Now it's time to clean up. And once you feel finished, you're going to set it aside to dry. Once it's dry, it'll go back into your bag. So let's clean up. To clean up, we're going to dump out our water, give our brush a good rinse. And then I wanted to show you today, you can dry a brush on a paper towel just simply by giving it a little roll or a little brush stroke there. You can also, you're welcome to, after you dump out the water, put the brush in with the hair pointing up and it'll dry that way too. Let's get back to our closing activity so we can talk about what we learned today. Nice work, everybody. So let's review what we've talked about today and what we've made today. So here I am in 6 standard reflection questions. And once again, for early and intermediate and advancing learners, those questions are going to look a little different. We might see some icons, some things that learners can point to, as well as 7th and 8th grade standard are also going to look a little bit different. Welcome to lesson 3. So today we are going to talk a little bit more about George Washington and what he did as first president of the United States, and a little bit about his history before that. For our academic mini lesson, we're going to take a look at our completed graphic organizers and plug them into our art. And I'll just quickly show you over here so you can see the early learner lesson 3 opening activity, very similar in structure, the content of George Washington's life and experiences. And then let's go ahead and jump over to the art making. I'll meet you over at the art table. Here we are on day 3 of art making. I have my permanent marker. I have my printout of George Washington's contour line drawing. I have a plastic sleeve. I also have some hand sanitizer and some paper towels handy in case I need them, as well as a pencil. So first things first, I printed this using 8.5 by 11 paper, and because our final art is 8 by 10 inches, just wanted to let you know I folded this a tiny bit over, or maybe you could cut it if you'd like so that it would fit into the sleeve. I'm just going to open up the sleeve and slide it in, supporting students as needed. And then take your black permanent marker and just begin to slowly trace these lines. So for some of our learners, we're going to need some support for this, and we may even just do what we consider to be the major lines. You could even leave out some of the detail lines. It's going to take a little while to do this, so I'm going to put it on fast forward for you. I just want to point out, because of my folding, it's not going all the way to the edge of the plastic, but I'm just going to continue this line as if it is. Now let's say that I make a line on accident that I don't want, and this is going to be up to you as a teacher how you distribute this. If people need to erase, you can just take a small amount of sanitizer onto a paper towel, and it should come right off. Great, so once your tracing is complete, you can set that aside and then grab your stippled background for adding your facts about George Washington. So for our early learners, I have some printouts of images that can be used, cut out and glued to the background to show one fact about George Washington. Let me just go ahead and cut one out. And, try to keep in mind the portrait is going to be covering this, but let them stick it where they want to stick it. And if there's time, of course, learners are welcome to add more images to this. Other options include cutting and pasting one of the words that they traced during the academic mini lesson, or writing one word in pencil, and then tracing it with the marker. So that's for our early, intermediate, and advancing options. I also want to show you for our 6th through 8th grade learners, standard, they're going to be adding written facts to the background. So from their graphic organizers, they will choose facts to write, and things to consider are just how it's going to look through the portrait, and also the number of facts is going to differ across learners, right? So encourage them to use pencil first and choose their facts to write. So once students have completed their facts, whatever way they look, whether visual or with the written word, if they have time and they feel ready, they can add some representational imagery related to the facts. So it could be something like a boat, it could be something like flag. If your students feel like it, they're welcome to do that. Once again, in pencil first, then in marker. And then once again, it's going to be time to clean up. I'm going to remove the paper that I traced, hand it back to my teacher to save for later, and slide my background into the sleeve and see how it looks. Voila. So one thing that you can encourage students as you work on each founder is to really think about the placement of their facts. Okay. For our intermediate and advancing learners, it might be 2 facts and 2 words or phrases or more. Nice job! So you can see the closing activity for lesson 3 is structured the same way as for lesson 2 and 1. We're going to have some review as well as presenting and sharing our work. Welcome to lesson 4. Today we're going to start learning about another founder named Benjamin Franklin. And for our opening activity, as always, we'll look at some art and answer some questions. Then we'll have a read aloud with new vocabulary for our academic mini lesson and complete our graphic organizers for Benjamin Franklin. Meet me at the art table so that we can work on our backgrounds for Benjamin Franklin. So we're going to add some zigzag lines to our Benjamin Franklin backgrounds. And for these, the color selection is going to be secondary colors. So secondary colors are what happen when you mix 2 primaries together. So if I mix red and yellow, what color do I get? That's right, orange. If I mix yellow and blue, what color do I get? Green. If I mix blue and red together, what do I get? Purple. And these are our secondary colors. For early learners, we may not want to take the time to mix all the colors, but you're certainly welcome to, or if you'd like to demonstrate it for them, you can. As well as for intermediate and advancing, you're welcome to, at your discretion, mix the secondary colors together with your learners. And same with 6th, 7th, and 8th standard. It's really up to you as a teacher. If you want to take the time to have them mix, it is a very useful activity for learning how the colors work together. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you right now. If for some reason you don't have time and you have in your set of tempera paints the secondary colors, purple, green, and orange, you're certainly welcome to use those straight out of the box. So I'm going to use my big brush to mix this color, kind of like when I did the brown. I'm going to grab some red and put it in my muffin tin. Swirl it around. Rinse my brush. I'm going to grab some yellow, add it to my red, and already I've got a really nice orange there. That's good. So I'm going to mix 2 secondary colors. So I'm going to choose orange today. I'm also going to make some green. So just like the others, I'm taking the blue, adding it into my muffin pan, rinsing my brush, and then I'm going to grab my yellow and add that in and get a really nice green. Excellent. So for the zigzag, I'm actually going to use my small brush here and once again hold it like a pencil if my grip allows me to do that. You know, and some of us might have a grip like this. That's okay, that works too. I got a drop on my paper. This is a perfect time to show you. If this kind of thing happens, you can take a paper towel and just lift it off, or you can turn it into an opportunity. Like, oh, this is going to be my first zigzag. Right, and it's like down, across, and down, down, across, and down, down, across, and down. My zigzags might be different sizes, down, across, and down. Try to hold my brush steady. And so I just want to reiterate, texture on these is optional, not required. And if it feels like it's a more appropriate tool for your learner, you're welcome to use the texture tools to make the zigzags. You can also use them just to experiment with what happens on the page. Very nice, everybody. So we're going to clean up this for today, and then we're going to do some reflecting and some sharing of our work. So let's clean up by dumping out our water, rinsing our brushes and drying them, and rinsing and cleaning our muffin pans. Nice work, everybody. I'm so excited for these portraits to come together. Let's take some time to show what we've made and talk about what we learned today. Welcome to Lesson 5. Today we're going to learn a little bit more about Benjamin Franklin and how he contributed to the founding of the United States. We'll also finish our backgrounds and our portraits of him. The facts and our notes about Benjamin Franklin will get turned into sentences that will become part of our artwork. Grade 6 standard will have a minimum of 4 sentences on their background. Grade 7 standard will have a minimum of 5 sentences. And grade 8 standard will have a minimum of 6. So here's some examples of how those sentences come together. I also wanted to jump over and show you Early Learner Lesson 5 graphic organizer. So students will have access to images that they can cut and glue to add facts to their backgrounds as well. So let's meet at the art table and work on the remainder of our Benjamin Franklin portraits. So for lesson 5, Benjamin Franklin, it's very similar. We're going to slide his printout into a sleeve, trace it with a marker, and then add our facts to our Benjamin Franklin zigzag background. All right. Nice work, everybody. I really saw your creativity flowing, and it's so amazing how no two portraits are alike. I'd love to hear more about what you made and talk about what you learned. Welcome to Lesson 6. Today we are going to learn about another founder named James Armistead Lafayette and answer a few questions about some artwork with him. As usual, we're going to have an academic mini lesson, adding images or words to our graphic organizers as we learn about James Armistead Lafayette's role in the founding of the United States. Once those graphic organizers are filled in with notes and facts about James Armistead Lafayette, we'll jump into the art making lesson. So please meet me at the art table and we'll get started. All right, so today we are going to make the background for James Armistead Lafayette. You can choose another one of your aged background papers that you painted. And I wanted to show you on this one, I added some salt. So you can see that it's dried with the salt in place. And you're welcome to leave the salt on there, or if you'd like, over a trash can or someplace that's easy to clean up, you can kind of dust off the salt. It's up to you as an artist to decide how you want it to look. And you can see what happens with the salt. It just kind of sucks in the paint and also leaves a blank space where the green was, so right under the green. It's pretty cool. So for James Armistead Lafayette, we are going to use a monochromatic color scheme. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah, mono means one, chroma means color. So we're going to choose one color and use it in different shades of light and dark. And the way that we can do that today is by using water. So I'm going to take some blue paint for our James Armistead Lafayette background. We're just doing straight lines. I'm going to go straight up and down with my bigger brush. Diagonal lines are good too. And then I'm just going to grab some water and do a water line next to it. So you can start to see how the blue gets lighter as you add more water, and you can even see the brown underneath it. We want to make sure that we leave it so that some brown is showing for sure to keep that aged look. And you can go in different directions. Yeah, and you can use your small brush for this as well. I also want to invite you again to use your texture tools. So I might today just get my sponge a little bit wet and see what happens. And I want to show you also with the toothbrush, we did a spatter, but we can also brush the paint a little bit and see what happens. Just experiment and enjoy. Once time is up or you're finished, it's going to be time to clean up. The same process as usual. Make sure you empty your jar, rinse your brushes, rinse and dry your muffin pan if you need to, and I will meet you back to have our closing activity. Wow, your art is looking amazing. Keep it up, everybody. Let's hear about what you learned today, and let's present our work and answer questions. Welcome to Lesson 7 of our U.S. Founders Portraits project. We're going to continue today talking about James Armistead Lafayette. Let's take a look at some more images of him and remind ourselves who he was and why his actions mattered. For our academic mini lesson, we are going to once again turn our facts and our notes into completed sentences about James Armistead Lafayette. And we'll take some time to do that. Here's some model sentences, and then let's get into the art making. Meet me at the art table. So here we will trace the portrait and add our facts. So I'm not showing you the tracing process, and I'm going to show you the intermediate to advancing and also the early learner options. I'm going to take some images from our printouts that students can cut and glue, showing one or more facts. And again, an option is to trace or write a word or more than one word if that feels available. So here's an icon, an image showing that he was a slave. And that's something that wasn't really talked about in the lesson too much, but it's something that we mustn't forget that happened in history. I definitely encourage you to explore that more deeply with your students, because the more that we learn about it, my hope is that the less likely it is to repeat and the more we can heal. He was a slave, he spied on the British, and he became free. Your backgrounds and your portraits are looking incredible, and thank you everyone for cleaning up so nicely. Who would like to present their work and tell us something or point to something that you learned about James Armistead Lafayette? Beautiful, beautiful. Welcome to Lesson 8. Today we're going to talk about another founder. Her name was Abigail Adams. Here's a portrait of her by Gilbert Stuart. Let's look at this and answer a few questions. And just as always, our academic mini lesson consists of hearing a read aloud with no vocabulary and filling in a graphic organizer with some notes and some facts about Abigail Adams. Then we're going to get into our art making lesson, so please meet me at the art table. All right, today's the day for painting our Abigail Adams background. So I have my fourth and final aged background paper here. For Abigail Adams, we are going to be using complementary colors. So complementary colors are two colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel. And you'll see a slide that has the color wheel. You'll be able to point to a color, and directly across from that, you'll see the complementary. So you'll see that red and green are opposite each other, yellow and purple are opposite each other, and blue and orange are opposite each other. So I want to invite you to choose one complementary pair of colors to use for adding to our Abigail Adams background. And because she was a writer, we want to do wavy, kind of scrolly lines. It's up to you if you'd like your students to mix their own secondary colors for the complementary pair, or you can have it pre-mixed or use what's in your tempera set. For simplicity's sake, today I'm just going to go ahead and use what's in my set. And I'll do my orange and blue complementary pair. I actually have my orange mixed right here from when I mixed my secondary colors, so I'm going to use that as well as my blue here in my primary set. And I'm just going to use my small brush, get it wet, pick up some paint here, and just make some wavy lines. So it's very open-ended. It doesn't have to look a certain way. Just let it flow. And in terms of motor skills, you're welcome to help with hand over hand here. You can also use any of our alternative tools, putting one on the finger to make a wavy line. Oops, I made brown because I didn't rinse my sponge, but that's okay. I'm gonna go with it. Once those wavy lines feel finished, students are welcome to use the texture tools or any optional other tools to complete that background. So now it's time to clean up, and by now you know you're just an expert at cleaning up. So we're gonna rinse out our jar, rinse out our brushes and our tools, rinse out our muffin pan if it's dirty, and tidy up to get ready for our closing activity. Your art is getting better and better every day. I cannot wait to see these when they are all four completed. So let's share what we've been working on and see if we can review some of the facts that we learned about Abigail Adams. All right, so I jumped over to early learners for lesson 9 just to help you remember how this is differentiated. For our opening activity, we continue to have images and portraits from that time period with that founder and questions that students can point to answer. Our academic mini lesson, once again, will involve completing the graphic organizer with images of facts about Abigail Adams. And then we will get into our art making lesson. And with our 6th standard learners, they'll be referring to their written graphic organizers to make complete sentences to add to their backgrounds. And with our early learners, they're going to be referring to what they have learned already, looking at their completed graphic organizers and making some selections about images that they're going to add to their backgrounds. So let's meet at the art table for the art making portion. Today is a day for inserting Abigail Adams' contour line portrait into the sleeve so that we can trace it with our black markers and then add our facts to the background. And in the interest of time, I am going to move on to our final day of assembling, just so that you can see how that looks. Wow, you are getting so good at cleaning up. Thank you, everybody, for doing that, and thank you for your beautiful work today on your Abigail Adams portraits. Let's share what we've made. And point to a word, phrase, or image on your artwork that shows how Abigail Adams helped. Did she help by fighting or by writing? Is one question. And so you can see the closing activity. This is the closing activity of our 6th standard learners. A little bit more language here, less image, and the language gets more dense as you go up in grade. Hey, welcome to lesson 10. I can't believe it's already our last day. You all have done amazing work. You've been working really hard. You've all been super creative, and I can tell that you've really learned a lot. So thank you for participating in this really cool project. Let's just quickly review the 4 historical figures that we studied. Who can share one important fact about George Washington? What role did Benjamin Franklin play in helping the colonies? How did James Armistead Lafayette contribute during the Revolutionary War? How did Abigail Adams influence the founding of the United States? So that's for 6th standard. I'm going to jump over to early just so that you can see how it's differentiated. Who led the army? So a student could point to the founder who led the army. Who helped using ideas and writing? Who helped by sharing secret information? Who helped by writing letters and sharing ideas with leaders? Then for our academic mini lesson, we are going to talk about what it means to be a presenter and how to be an audience member. So meet me at the art table. We're going to meet there to assemble our final product before we present it. Yay, we made it to day 10. Today I'm going to show you how to mount your final portraits so that we can present them to our classmates and our teachers. I've got my mat board, I've got my tape. I also have optionally some scissors. And I'm going to lay my portrait face down on top of the mat, just trying to line it up as straight as possible. You can kind of eyeball it. And then I'm going to take some tape. Depending on your learners, you may have some tape pre-cut or you can distribute it to them one at a time. The first thing I'm going to tape is the corners diagonally. Some learners may want to experience the fine motor practice of tearing the tape. Some may want to cut it with scissors, or maybe it's just pre-cut for them. So I'm going to do the corners first and then the sides and the top and bottom. Voila. I'm going to flip it over. Make sure it's all lined up. Looks pretty good. I'm going to do that with all 4 of my portraits. All right, we are ready to attach these to our poster board. So we have these sticky dots. Believe me, they're quite sticky on both sides. And what we're going to do is on the back of our framed portraits, attach sticky dots on every corner and across the top as well. They feel kind of like little glue dots. So depending on your learner's sensory and fine motor, you can support as needed. And then I have this large poster board here. I hope you can see. I'm going to end up lining these up next to each other and on top of each other. So I'm just going to line up the edges of my frame with the edges of the poster board and press. The sticky dots make it stay. And I'll do all 4. I'll do here, here, and then 2 at the top. And here is a completed example with all 4 images mounted. Okay, everyone, you've completed your portraits. They look amazing. Now we're going to set them up on display. It could be on our desks. Maybe there's a place to hang them. It's up to you teachers to decide what's best. And we'll do a gallery walk. So that's when learners take a look at their peers' completed projects. While doing the gallery walk, teachers, you can pause and say, find a founder that you recognize. Point to a word that you can read. Notice one color that you see a lot. After the gallery work, it will be time for individual learners to present their work. It's not a discussion. It's an opportunity for each learner to present a fact with support. So for our early learners, they might point to the name of the person that the portrait's of and a fact. And 6th grade learners are also going to share one factual sentence and why that fact is important to the United States. This is a structure of answering with fill in the blank. If that's helpful, it's a slide you can have on display during the presentation. There's also going to be a whole class reflection about artistic choices. As I mentioned, every piece of art is unique and beautiful, so let's see what we notice that's different and what's the same. And if there's time, we're certainly welcome to give peer feedback, a positive comment about a classmate's work. And let's keep it brief. And if needed, we can model some respectful language and we can use these sentence stems that are in the speaker notes. Wow, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your remarkable work. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Let's have one final reflection if we haven't done this already. And then I really want to take some time to celebrate you. So if everyone could stand up, let's clap for our artists. Amazing work, everybody. I'm so proud of you. I hope you're proud of yourselves. And thank you again for joining me for this U.S. Founders Portrait Project. Thank you all so much for joining me for this overview of the U.S. Founders Mixed Media Portrait Project. As you can see, it's differentiated so that it's easy to teach to a class of students with a wide range of learning levels. It seamlessly connects literacy and visual art and helps students with a wide range of learning levels learn one aspect of how the United States was founded by studying important historical figures and showing what they learned through visual art and written facts. I do want to encourage you to explore additional facets of the founding of the United States with your students and to consider how you might integrate art into those as well. Once again, I'm Katie Schuessler, Curriculum Specialist for the CEI Meridian USA Professional Learning Program. I wish you all the best in implementing this project with your students. Thanks again.